They were never cold because they didn't care. They were cold because they cared too deeply once, and it almost broke them. And now, when an avoidant finally chooses you, it's not halfway, it's not temporary, it's a love that arrives after surviving itself. They didn't fall in love the way others do. No fireworks on the first night, no rushing promises, no dramatic confessions under the stars. They watched. They listened. They measured every feeling like it could hurt them if it grew too fast. The avoidant doesn't love loudly at first. They love quietly, like someone holding a fragile glass heart in both hands, afraid to drop it again. They learned early that love could disappear. That closeness could turn into loss. That trusting too deeply meant bleeding alone afterward. So they became good at distance. Good at silence. Good at pretending they didn't need what they wanted most. And then you came. Not demanding. Not chasing. Not forcing your way into their guarded world. You stayed soft where others were loud. Patient where others rushed. Safe where others felt unpredictable. For the first time, love didn't feel like danger. It felt like rest. When an avoidant is ready to love you, it doesn't look dramatic. It looks intentional. They choose you every day in small ways. They show up when running would be easier. They stay present when their instincts scream to disappear. Their love is built slowly, but it's built to last. They begin to open, not all at once, but honestly. They share stories they've never told. Fears they've never admitted. Dreams they once buried because hoping felt too risky. And when they love you, they love with depth that surprises even them. They listen like your words matter. They protect the bond like something sacred. They don't play games, because love is no longer a battlefield to them. This is the love that doesn't burn fast and fade. This is the love that grows roots. The kind that learns you, studies you, and chooses you without noise or performance. When an avoidant finally loves you, they love you in ways you've never been loved before. With awareness, with intention, with a loyalty that comes from knowing exactly what it costs to let someone in. And when they don't stay because they're afraid to leave. They stay because they finally found someone worth coming home to. They were never born distant. They were not made of silence or absence by nature. Once, they loved with openness, with a softness that reached out without fear, trusting that closeness would be met with care. But love, when it breaks without warning, teaches lessons that stay longer than memories. What once felt safe slowly became something to guard against. The quiet heart learned that being visible meant being vulnerable, and vulnerability had come with a cost they were not ready to pay again. So they learned to hide, not out of cruelty, but out of survival. They mastered the art of appearing calm while storms lived inside them. They smiled when they wanted to retreat, listened when they wanted to protect themselves, and kept their deepest feelings folded away where no one could touch them. To the outside world, they seemed self-sufficient, unbothered, unreachable. Inside, they were simply careful, measuring every emotional step as if the ground beneath love could collapse at any moment. This quiet heart built walls slowly, brick by brick, after every disappointment that taught them that attachment could turn into abandonment. Each wall was not meant to keep love out, but to keep pain from getting in. They learned how to be present without being exposed, how to care without fully committing, how to stay close enough to feel something but far enough to escape if it hurt too much. Distance became a language they spoke fluently. Even when closeness was what they secretly desired. They were not afraid of love itself. They were afraid of what love had done before. The late nights of overthinking, the unanswered messages, the promises that dissolved into silence. These memories didn't fade. They settled quietly into the heart, shaping how trust was given and how emotions were expressed. Love became something to approach cautiously, like fire that could warm or burn depending on how close you stood. Behind the restraint lived a depth most people never saw. A longing for connection that stayed unspoken. A tenderness that waited for proof instead of making assumptions. The quiet heart did not stop feeling, it learned to feel privately, protecting its softness behind composure, waiting for a love gentle enough not to demand exposure before safety was felt. They did not rush into love the way stories often promise. For them, love was never a leap, it was a slow walk across uncertain ground, one careful step at a time. Every feeling was observed before it was allowed to grow, every attachment questioned before it was trusted. Not because they lacked desire, but because desire without safety had once led them into places they barely survived. Love, to them, needed proof before it needed passion. This kind of heart learns patience not as a virtue, but as a necessity. They waited to see how someone handled silence, how they responded to boundaries, how they stayed when nothing exciting was happening. Small moments mattered more than grand gestures. Consistency became the language that softened them. Not the intensity of words, but the reliability of presence. They watched closely, storing evidence that this time might be different, that closeness did not have to end in loss. Their waiting was never indifference. It was protection shaped like restraint. Feelings arrived quietly and stayed hidden, growing in the background while the outside remained calm. They tested safety not with demands, but with space. They needed to know that distance would not be punished, that independence would not be mistaken for rejection, that needing time did not mean needing less love. In that space, trust either survived or revealed itself as fragile. When safety began to feel real, it was subtle. A longer pause before pulling away. A deeper conversation allowed to linger. A moment where they shared something personal without immediately retreating afterward. These were not small victories to them. Each one required courage. Each one meant choosing vulnerability over the comfort of isolation, even if just for a moment. Love waited because fear spoke loudly in their past. They remembered how quickly warmth could turn cold, how easily connection could become expectation, how being needed could become being trapped. So they waited for a love that did not demand urgency. A love that allowed breathing room. A love that stayed steady instead of chasing intensity. Safety was not about perfection. It was about predictability, about knowing that affection would not be withdrawn as punishment or used as leverage. When they finally allowed love to step forward, it wasn't sudden. It was the result of countless quiet confirmations that they could remain themselves and still be chosen, that closeness did not mean losing control, that this time love could exist without fear for a long time. Their boundaries were not invitations, they were barricades. Built carefully, reinforced by past disappointments, these walls were the only way they knew how to stay safe while still remaining in the world of connection. They let people come close, but never close enough to see the entire truth. Every interaction passed through filters of control, distance, and self-protection. The walls were familiar, dependable, and lonely in ways they never admitted out loud. But something changed quietly, not in a dramatic moment, not through force or persuasion, but through consistency that refused to disappear. The same voice returning without pressure. The same presence staying without demands. Over time, the walls stopped feeling necessary and began to feel heavy. What once protected them now kept out something they had slowly started to want. Safety had arrived without taking anything away from them, and the heart noticed. The first door did not swing open wide. It cracked. A thought shared without rehearsal. A feeling spoken without being minimized. They waited for consequences that never came. No withdrawal, no punishment, no sudden distance. The door stayed open, just enough for light to enter, just enough to prove that vulnerability did not always lead to loss. That small opening changed everything inside them. Trust did not arrive as certainty. It arrived as permission. Permission to stay present instead of preparing an exit. Permission to be seen without immediately covering themselves again. Permission to believe that closeness could coexist with freedom. The walls began to soften, not because they were weak, but because they were no longer needed to carry the full weight of fear alone. They started letting someone in, not to rescue them, but to walk beside them. They allowed questions they once avoided. They listened without bracing themselves for disappointment. They shared pieces of themselves that had been locked away for years, unsure if anyone would handle them with care. Each door opened slowly, never all at once, but intentionally, with awareness of what it meant to be exposed. This transition was not easy. Every step forward was followed by a moment of hesitation. Old instincts whispered reminders of past pain, urging retreat, urging control. But something stronger answered back now. A quiet trust built not on promises, but on experience. The walls didn't vanish. They transformed. What once existed to keep others out became a structure that allowed entry, choice, and mutual respect, turning defense into openness without sacrificing safety for someone who learned to survive by leaving first. Staying becomes the bravest act of love. Their instinct was never to fight or demand, but to retreat, to create space before emotions could become overwhelming. When tension appeared, when closeness deepened, when expectations began to form, the urge to disappear felt automatic. Running was familiar. Distance had always been the safest solution they knew. But loving without running away does not happen overnight. It begins in moments where fear shows up and they choose not to obey it. A disagreement that doesn't end in silence. A heavy conversation that isn't avoided. A feeling that is allowed to exist without being shut down. These moments feel uncomfortable, almost foreign, because staying present requires them to sit with emotions they once escaped to protect themselves. They start to recognize the difference between danger and discomfort. Not every emotional surge is a threat. Not every conflict leads to abandonment. This awareness shifts something deep inside them. Instead of planning exits, they begin learning how to communicate. Instead of withdrawing, they try explaining. Their voice may shake, their words may come slowly, but the effort itself becomes an act of devotion. Loving without running also means allowing themselves to be needed without feeling trapped. In the past, being depended on felt suffocating, as if responsibility would erase their freedom. Now, they learn that mutual reliance can exist without control. They can care deeply without losing themselves. They can offer support without sacrificing autonomy. Love becomes a shared space, not a cage. There are still moments when old patterns surface. Silence feels tempting, distance feels easier, but now, they pause before choosing absence. They remind themselves that safety does not require disappearance. They allow their partner to see them struggle instead of vanishing during uncertainty. This transparency creates a bond that grows stronger not through perfection, but through honesty. As they stay, something unexpected happens. The fear that once dominated their relationships begins to lose power. The more they remain present through emotional intensity, the more confidence they gain in their ability to handle closeness. Love no longer feels like a countdown to loss. It feels like a place where they can stand without bracing for impact. Staying becomes a declaration, not spoken loudly, but lived consistently. Each time they choose connection over escape, they rewrite their understanding of love. They learn that intimacy does not demand self-erasure, and that commitment does not mean losing control. By loving without running away, they show a devotion rooted in courage, choosing presence even when distance would feel easier. Their love does not arrive in a rush. It forms quietly, shaped by time, patience, and repeated proof that staying is safe. Every feeling is layered carefully, not because they doubt its strength, but because they respect its weight. They know what happens when love is built too fast, when promises outrun understanding, when intensity replaces stability. This time, they choose slowness as a form of devotion. What they build is intentional. They notice details others overlook. The way you respond when they need space. The way you listen without interrupting. The way you remain steady even when they pull back slightly. These moments become the foundation of something lasting. Love grows not from constant closeness, but from consistency that survives distance without falling apart. A slow love allows them to show up fully. There is no performance, no pressure to be everything at once. They bring themselves as they are, learning to trust that who they are is enough. They let affection deepen naturally, without forcing milestones or rushing emotional declarations. Each step forward feels earned, grounded in understanding rather than fear. Commitment, for them, is not a dramatic promise spoken early. It is a pattern. It is choosing the same person again and again through ordinary days. It is staying when nothing exciting is happening. It is building routines, shared silence, and mutual respect. Their love does not need constant reassurance because it is reinforced through action, not words alone. This kind of love carries depth that only patience can create. They become deeply attuned to their partner's emotional rhythms. They learn when to lean in and when to give space. They protect the relationship not through control, but through care. What grows between them feels strong because it was never rushed into existence. Forever, to them, is not an abstract idea. It is something proven over time. It is knowing that love can evolve without disappearing, that closeness can deepen without becoming suffocating. They offer loyalty that comes from choice, not fear. When they finally settle into love, it is not because they are afraid of being alone, but because they have found something worth nurturing with patience and intention. A love built slowly carries resilience. It withstands misunderstandings, quiet phases, and emotional shifts without breaking. It is not fragile, because it was never hurried. It stands on trust earned through experience, on safety created through consistency, on devotion that grows stronger with time rather than fading with familiarity.